You're listening to the Birth Advocacy Podcast. I'm Kira Walsh, and let's be honest, you're not here for the watered-down birth education you'd get from a hospital class. On this podcast, we're talking about the stuff your provider probably won't tell you, the questions you didn't know you could ask, and how to advocate for yourself in a system that wasn't designed with you in mind. Listen, I know you've got advice flying at you from your provider, your best friend, your Facebook group, and your mother-in-law, and none of it feels clear or helpful. If you're craving unfiltered birth education that actually prioritizes you, you're in the right place. Let's jump in. Hey guys, you're listening to episode number 7 of the Birth Advocacy Podcast. And today we're diving into a question that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but it's one that absolutely needs to be asked. So y'all know I'm already going to talk about it. And that question is, if hospitals are so safe, why do home births have better outcomes? Now, like I said, I already know that this is going to ruffle some feathers, but let's be real. Most people assume hospitals are the safest place to give birth, right? It's what we've been told our entire lives, right? That birth is unpredictable, it's dangerous, it's this crazy event that needs to be medically managed by doctors in a medical setting. But when you actually look at the data, the outcomes tell a very different story. So today we're breaking down why home births, especially for low-risk pregnancies, consistently have better outcomes than hospital births. So we're going to be talking about lower intervention rates, fewer complications, and a birth experience that actually supports physiological birth instead of disrupting it literally every 5 minutes. So if you've ever heard, but what if something goes wrong, or, you're risking your baby's life by not being in a hospital, this episode is for you because we are going to unpack, number 1, the stats that nobody talks about. Number 2, why hospitals aren't always the safest place for birth. And then number 3, what's actually behind the fear-mongering around home birth. And we're going to talk about all of that in today's episode. So let's get into it. Okay, so I want to start with the huge elephant in the room. And that is the idea that hospitals are, by default, the safest place to have a baby, right? Like, if you tell someone you're planning a home birth, what is the very first thing they say? It's, oh my God, but what if something goes wrong, right? Every time you talk about home birth, that is somebody's first instinct if they don't know about home birth. It's their very first thought, as if hospitals just magically prevent emergencies or, bad outcomes just don't happen in the hospital. Or like if people aren't literally begging for help in hospital beds while being completely ignored while in labor. And here's the thing, hospitals aren't designed to support normal physiological birth. I think that really goes without saying. They are designed to manage risk, control liability, and keep things moving on a timeline. And when you introduce that into birth, you start seeing a hell of a lot more unnecessary interventions. You start seeing rising complication rates and outcomes that honestly should make people way more concerned about hospital birth than home birth. Because the truth is, the facts don't lie. So when we look at research from low-risk pregnancies, we know that planned home births have lower rates of interventions across the board. Like, we're talking fewer inductions, fewer augmentations of labor with Pitocin, obviously, lower rates of epidurals, clearly, because transfer rates to the hospital from a home birth is significantly low, and a drastic reduction in cesarean births. Again, there are situations where moms do transfer from home, but even those moms that transfer from home birth to hospital, all of those things are less. There's less Pitocin, less use of epidurals, and a significantly lower number of cesarean births. But the majority of those transfers are not emergencies. I'm going to say that again. The majority of transfers from home birth to hospital are not emergencies. Most of those transfers are for things like failure to progress, where it is usually an extremely long labor, typically for a first-time mom. Maybe baby's in a funky position. I feel like I need to do an episode just about Madeline's birth. I was in labor with her for 72 hours. And if I would have transferred to the hospital, I guarantee I would have been a C-section. But because of my incredible birth team, we avoided that. But side note, but again, most transfers to the hospital are for things like failure to progress, slow labor, or maternal exhaustion. not because someone is bleeding out or there's an emergency and they're on the way to the ER. Like truly, transfers to the hospital from a home birth are because mom is just so fucking exhausted. So again, just babies born at home have lower NICU admission rates, which like if hospitals were so much safer, wouldn't we expect babies born in the hospital to have better outcomes, not worse, right? So again, just think about all of these stats. And another one is the maternal mortality rate is significantly higher in hospitals. And I need to say that again for the people in the back is the United States has one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the developed world, and the majority of those deaths are happening in the hospital. So tell me again how home birth is the dangerous option. So you might be thinking, why do home births have better outcomes, right? So why is this happening? Why do home births have better outcomes when we've been told our entire lives that hospitals are the safest place to be? Now, there are three huge reasons. And number one is the medical model versus the midwifery model. Hospitals, obviously, operate under the medical model of care, which means birth is seen as something that needs to be managed. There is literally a protocol for everything. Labor's not moving fast enough, give her Pitocin. Baby's not descending fast enough, let's break your water, which, again, a whole nother episode on breaking your water. It is not as innocent as it seems. Another one is maybe you've been pushing for 2 hours, time to prep for a cesarean. Or, they give you Pitocin, baby's not tolerating labor. Why is it baby's fault, first of all? It's the Pitocin. It is all about efficiency in the hospital, not physiology. But the midwifery model of care trusts birth. It trusts your body's timeline instead of trying to force your body and your baby into a one-size-fits-all protocol. And that difference alone leads to better outcomes. Like literally, I wouldn't even have to talk about any of these other reasons. Literally just the medical model of care versus the midwifery model of care alone leads to better outcomes. But let's add on to it, right? Number two, fewer interventions means less risk. It's a domino effect in the hospitals. So let's say you get induced, right? You're on Pitocin, you're on Cytotec. Your contractions get insanely strong, like way stronger than a natural contraction. Your baby starts showing signs of distress, which shocker. And then you end up with an emergency, quote unquote, C-section. And then people are like, thank God you're in the hospital, right? Like, thank God that I was in the hospital. They saved my baby's life. No, the hospital literally created that emergency because home births avoid this cascade of interventions. And that means fewer complications and a better birth experience. Go back to the beginning, right? If you weren't induced in the first place, your contractions wouldn't have got so strong. Baby would not have shown signs of distress, and you would not have likely ended up with an emergency C-section, which again, emergency C-section versus crash C-section, two very different things. And then number three, birth is designed to work until we mess with it. At the end of the day, birth works, right? Your body knows what to do. Your baby, who is an active participant in your birth, knows what to do. And when birth is left alone, when it's supported and not controlled, it unfolds the way it is supposed to. The problem is not birth. The problem is how we treat birth. And hospitals treat birth like a disaster waiting to happen instead of a normal physiological process that it is. Okay, so what do we do with all of this information, right? Like, listen, I'm not saying, and I will never say, that home birth is for everyone. Because truly, I believe you need to birth where you feel the safest. Because again, your body is going through a physiological process. If you do not feel safe at home, you should not be birthing your baby at home. Your body is going to respond to what your mind is telling it. So I'm not saying that home birth is for everybody. But what I am saying is that people deserve accurate information instead of all this fear-based nonsense that they're getting from the hospitals. And if hospitals truly were the safest place to give birth, we wouldn't see the statistics that we're seeing. We wouldn't have the highest maternal mortality rate in the developed world. We would not have women walking out of birth saying, at least my baby is alive. That is not safety. That is survival, and there is a difference. So if you are listening to this episode and you're thinking like, damn, I wish more people knew about this, I want you to send this episode to a friend. I want you to post about it on your social media. I want you to start the conversation. because birth does not have to be a fight. But until more people start questioning the way that things are done, until they start questioning the medical model of care, that's exactly the way it's going to be. Moms are going to continue losing babies in the hospital. They're going to continue walking out of the hospitals with birth trauma, and they're going to be perpetuating this cycle of give birth at the hospital because it's the safest, because thank God they saved my baby. And that is the way it's going to continue to be until we start questioning the medical model of care. So before I wrap up today's episode, I always give you a challenge. So here's your challenge. I want you to do one thing this week that digs deeper into this topic. Maybe that's doing some research yourself and looking up home birth safety stats. Maybe it's reading a birth story from someone who had a home birth after a traumatic hospital experience and just see the difference. Maybe it's just asking yourself why we automatically assume that hospitals are the safest place to give birth. And I want you to share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it. The more we talk about this, the more we shift the conversation around birth. So that's all I have for you today. But again, question everything, protect your energy, and I'll catch you next time.